Hello and welcome everyone to this week's episode of the podcast. This week I'm joined by the wonderful Patricia from the Design Trust. Those of you that have been listening to the podcast for a while will have heard me and Patricia talk before on various different topics. But today we are going to be talking a little bit about, our goal for today is to cover 5 tips for creating standout workshops as a creative. So if you've ever thought about teaching your own workshops, or perhaps you already do, either in person or online, either in jewelry making or in anything creative, then Patricia is going to offer some support and advice today. And she's also an author now of this incredible book, which I have in front of me. If you're listening on the podcast, it's called Teaching Creative Workshops in Person and Online. And Jewelers Academy also features in the book as one of the case studies. And Patricia has done so much work around the idea of teaching, how we can be great teachers, why we teach, but particularly for creatives, which I think is something quite unique. And we can get the book at bookshops.org, which is where the independent online bookshop retailers are, or you can get it directly from the Bloomsbury website, which is Patricia's publisher. So welcome, Patricia. Thanks so much for coming back on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. Very exciting title and very exciting topic to talk about today.
Absolutely. So let's just get stuck in and we'll talk about some of the other things around the book as we go through. So, what is your first tip for us around creating standout creative workshops?
So this is really at the core of the book because, let's be honest, the last few years, teaching has become a very popular income stream. Post-COVID, I think everybody wanted a new hobby. And many creatives indeed told me like that actually teaching is sometimes easier to sell than to sell their products, which is interesting. But with all that popularity, of course, the problem is that, are you selling indeed enough bookings, either teaching online or in person? So, this question about standing out is actually really important, I think, to get sales, but also I think on a more personal level. Let's be honest. I really want teaching not to be this kind of cynical kind of thing, as in, oh, let's make a quick bucks or something like that, but actually to go deeper. I started indeed the book with, around being a fire starter. For me, teaching is starting a fire. And that's very much where we get started. And indeed, the first question, or the first step, I would say, is start with why. And that's based around quite a well-known book, but also indeed, like for me, why do you want to teach? And actually really go deeper into that. And when I indeed, like you were referring to the different case studies, I asked everybody those questions. Why do you teach? And I really let people talk and think about that a bit deeper. So why do you teach? Of course, for a lot of people, it might be about, they love other people. When you're working by yourself, it can get a bit lonely. So actually, indeed, like working with other people, having a community or things like that, for example. For some people, it's about learning more, because what is so interesting, I think, is when you teach, the teacher actually learns the most. That's, I think, actually very often what happens. And people see really reflecting in their students or in their participants, the process and actually getting new insights because somebody else asks you questions. And I think that's such a rich area to look at. For some people, indeed, it's about keeping skills alive. I do quite a lot of work with Heritage Crafts, which is a fantastic charity. We're really supporting people when it comes to heritage skills and endangered heritage skills. And so, for example, one of the people that I interviewed for the book is Silversmith Brownie, and she very much says, like, if on my watch, after 5,000 years of silversmithing, we're losing these really important skills, that's not going to happen. So there's a really, really strong motivation there. And then, of course, it's about making money. Let's be honest. Nothing wrong with making money. For a lot of people, it could be very seasonal. I see that quite a bit. why they're teaching. So indeed, if your business is very relying on Christmas, then actually teaching earlier in the year might make your business a lot more viable. And it could be a very regular income stream as well for people. So the first one is really digging a bit deeper. And I would suggest indeed to anybody listening is get a notebook and look at, why do I want to teach? And try to identify 5, 6 reasons. And in a way, go deeper, give your answer, and then kind of go, and why is that important to me? And then again, ask that question, why is that important to me? And then you really get to the core values. And I think then it's about, how can you create training based on that? Because indeed, like, yes, Simon Sinek in his book, Start With Why, says, what you do doesn't make you unique, but why and how you do it does. And I think especially for teaching, that's such a strong kind of thing to remember. I think it's like not what you do. Let's be honest, there's so many jewelry workshops, a lot of very, very similar things, but like why you do it and how you do it, that is really where the core is.
I love that so much. I think that's a great place to start. And I think sometimes when you're brand new as well, you almost don't know why until you start. And
Mm.
then you start to realize why. Because I remember my first workshops that I taught, I was very new in my business and I'd been making jewelry for a while. And I didn't really want to teach. I was sort of like, oh,
Don't tell anybody.
I'm not sure. Like, I'll just give it a go. I'll do a couple of classes. But then once I did my first class, I was like, oh my gosh, I love this. Even more than making jewelry, I love this.
Mm,
Because of, the interaction and seeing, well, all the things that you said, like sharing the love of the making with other people and also seeing them love it. And then that made me love it even more. And it was like, kind of the osmosis that happens in the
mm,
room. Um, so I think also if you don't have a why yet, once you start with that in mind, it
yeah,
might start to come out.
yeah,
So I love that. But then you're right in terms of like being unique and your offering, it is really you that you're offering as a
yeah,
teacher, isn't it? And the skills, but it's your environment you're creating. And that's why I never think that there's competition in teaching, because
no,
we all enjoy learning from different people at different times in different ways. And
mm, mm,
we're kind of, I feel like we're drawn to the people that we want to learn from.
mm,
And the same with, other teachers and other students. So
mm,
I
mm,
love that. Okay, starting with why and then thinking about, why do we want to do this and how are we going to do it? And the what is less sort of central to
mm.
the theme.
Although I do come, because that will be my second one. Is what do you teach? Yeah, and that's very often a question I get. Is what do you teach? Do you want to teach a project or a skill? Yeah, very often that's where people start. Like a project works very well for a 1-day workshop. If it is like a beginners, people love, like to show off a certain project, and show it on Instagram that they've done that in the day, for example. A skill, is a bit more tricky in a way, especially in a short period of time, and might be a bit more suitable for, a longer course, for example. But I really encourage people, also to look at other things around, like, maybe looking at the history of jewelry making or feminism, or really looking at your values a lot more. If you're really interested in sustainability is such a big topic. Which element of sustainability, could you teach about? It's not just about the practical skills. And indeed, like I would say really start to look at what do you teach, but then also what do you really teach? Because very often it's, what do people really get from this? Yeah. Is this about confidence? Is it about expressing? Is this about having some me time? And what is really interesting, when I was doing my research, a lot of us teach those kind of 1-day happy, fun workshop days for beginners. And actually, that's one of the hardest things to pull off. And people don't realize how hard it is because people come with very high expectations, want to have a fun day. It's very, very different than teaching at an art school where there is a curriculum and things like that. People come one day and they want to have fun. And then they get started, and then the little voices in the head start, playing up and things like that. Really, really interesting. And a lot of, especially beginner teachers underestimate how hard it actually is to create a fun day, but also really start to think about what's that next layer? What do you really want to teach? Is that about indeed, that confidence, creative confidence? Is it about, connecting again with people? What are people really wanted to get from this? And then I've got I'm on a bit of a mission, to be honest, Jess. I'm sort of saying quite loudly now, please stop teaching your own skills. And the reason I'm saying that is because you will get into problems, sometimes around copyright. Sometimes it can be that people then start making what you do and what you're known for, and cheap copies appear on, Etsy and things like that because you taught people how to do it. But also in terms of indeed, you teach people something and, that might actually devalue your experience, your knowledge, and therefore people might charge more because you make it look really simple. Yeah. And there's a lot of, I really throw this ball in there, but there's been a lot of discussion with a lot of the people that I work with around copyright, around, on one level, you need to show people, how to do it, especially if it is around, those historical skills, then they really, really, need to know how that works. But that's a longer course. That's like 6 months, 12 months. That's nearly an apprenticeship. But in a one-day workshop, be a little bit careful what you are teaching. Yeah. And for me, it's about really looking not just at skills, but indeed looking at your values, as I said. Yes. If your work is about feminism, and especially with something as juicy as jewelry. Yeah. I think jewelry is so special when it comes to memories, when it comes to connections between people, the symbolism, why we have been wearing jewelry for 10,000 years, maybe even longer. Yeah. Big things like that. Or maybe it is I was recently talking to, a really quite established jeweler, and she was basically teaching people what she does. And I said, be a little bit careful with this. And she said, I've been feeling a bit uncomfortable with this indeed. And we looked and we really started to kind of go, okay, what do you want? What are you known for? What do you actually really love doing? And what's your challenge? And then it was actually a lot more around, what she's really interested in is in geometry and in actually creating patterns in a way. And I said, if you wouldn't be using jewelry, could you teach that as your creative kind of thing? Yes. So maybe create collages, maybe create something three-dimensional with another material. And then she really had a lot more ideas around that, rather than teaching what she knew kind of thing. And so, for me, it's about not just going for the obvious, but actually dig a bit deeper around, your knowledge, your experience, and looking in a way, I would say, beyond the obvious there. And again, because we're talking very much about creating something stand out, be careful. Yeah, because you can get into trouble. And the problem is it's really difficult to actually protect your teaching. Yeah. And so I would say what you teach, get a bit more creative with that. And then, the formats and how you can, we get back to that in a minute, but really think more interestingly, I would say. And maybe indeed very much what, in Bloom's taxonomy, a little bit of theory there. Go for higher creative levels, potentially, not just the skills, I would say.
Interesting. Yeah, it's kind of thinking outside the box, isn't it? A bit about what skills you have and what you can teach. And you touched on teaching what you feel comfortable with, I think, which is depending on where you're at with your own journey. there's some jewelers who've been making for such a long time that they could teach anything and no one would be able to copy them because you'd have to do 20 years of training to
Yeah. Yeah.
to get anywhere. But you're right, if you've got something that you want to protect, I always find when I'm teaching, I want to be so giving and so free. I don't want to feel like I'm holding anything back. So
Mm-hmm.
if there's a conflict of interest, like I don't really want to teach you this, but I'm teaching it, I think that both sides can feel it, and competition starts to come in, and it doesn't feel like a flow.
Yeah.
Whereas, yeah, definitely for me, everything I teach, I'm just like, I just can't wait for you to learn this. Like, I just want to show you this because I loved learning it, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
excited to do it. And I think a lot of teaching is energy, isn't it? It's not necessarily just the content, but it's the energy you get across. And when we think about teachers at school and the subjects we enjoyed, I think it was all in the teaching really more than the topic.
Yeah.
And
And the personality of the teacher. Yeah. And I think again, but what I'm, yeah, it's a really controversial topic, and there's something to be said. People need to learn skills. They need to be able to know the rules, copy in a certain way. Yeah, I was talking to basket makers. Yeah, I've been doing quite a bit of work with the Basket Makers Association, and they said, Patricia, like they need to know the rules because otherwise the basket falls apart, and nobody, yeah, wants that. So this really interesting, really rich. I've had some really big discussions with people around this element. But like what I'm suggesting is go a bit deep. And again, like about what you're saying there, it's like we look back at how we were taught. But you were taught probably 30, 40 years ago.
mm,
And that is in a formal setting.
mm,
Here, you can have freedom. And that is what I sort of say with people. So, for example, indeed, using your experience a lot more, looking a lot more at your values, and indeed, like looking at different formats, or yeah, using your environment a lot more. Yeah, if you live in Hackney, London, or you live near the seaside, or you live in the countryside, are you using that? And we come to that in a minute.
mm. Brilliant. Okay, so number one was start with why. Number two was around the
What do you
content.
teach? And go a bit beyond a project for the day, of course, very popular, and look at going a bit deeper. Yeah, it's not just about skills. How do you teach creativity? And how can you teach and share some of your values? And maybe it's a lot more around the process,
Mm,
and it's a lot more about questioning rather than having a finished product.
mm.
Ooh, loads in there.
Awesome. Okay, so tip number three, what does that bring us on to?
That's about, are you creating an experience? For me, yeah, it's the whole process. And this is when you're selling a product, yeah, that's very different than when you're selling in a way a service. And a workshop, yeah, training is a service. So I would say from your website onwards, yeah, how do you create an experience for people? Because that's really what they're looking for. And I don't know about you, Jess, but like, yeah, like I've done a lot of work around really creative, fantastic workshops. And what do people want or are interested in is the quality of the coffee and the brownies, if the toilets are clean, and if they can park easily. Yeah. And I've done all this work around my fantastic workshop content, but those are the things that really matter to people. So, but like from the website, are you setting a scene? Are you creating that experience? It's creating a feeling in a way. What's the vibe of your workshop? Then indeed, like when you are sending an email out in preparation, before people come through the door, before they come to your online website. And I think this is especially important now because let's be honest, a lot of people are feeling a lot more socially anxious. And at the same time, they want community, but people are more nervous than they used to be. So in those, yeah, which you might consider a quite boring kind of, yeah, automatic emails, let's be honest about it, but they set the scene on how people will get through that door. Then when they come through that door, how do you welcome them? Yeah. How do you introduce yourself? How do you get people started? How do you create a group element? Or, yeah. And this again connects very strongly. Why are you teaching? what and how are you doing this? Yeah. And then indeed, like how you teach. And this was so interesting when I was doing the research for the book. I interviewed over 70 people. I only included 17 people, which was very, very hard choice. But like every time I asked people, how do you teach? They kind of would go, oh, Patricia, I just show them. And I will go, no, just step by step. How do you do this? And of course, when you're teaching in person, yeah, let's be honest, 70-80% is demonstrations or is indeed like, them doing the work. But that leaves still 30%. That still leaves the environment and how you create that. I've started to ask people, for example, around like, is the space quiet? What energy is there? If you could put any music on, what music would be playing in your workspace? And I think that's such an interesting one. Yeah. Is it quiet? Can I hear the birds? Can I hear, Brighton's beach and noise or, the bloody birds or whatever? Or is there soft piano music or, really interesting. What is the vibe within that space? And again, you are a curator of that. You're the conductor of that experience. All the way to, when people leave and aftercare. I think aftercare, again, is so important to get people back. But you are really, it's about creating a feeling for that day, especially if it is a beginner's one-day workshop. People come there because it might be their birthday. It might be a gift that somebody's given. It might be the start of a new hobby. It might be some me time. Yeah. But so important right now. And yes, they're coming there to learn something, but also it's like about that bigger feel. And there's so much that we can do as creators to use all the senses within that and that entire process and how you share that. And again, like, really important how you take charge of that and how you make that creative. It's all the little decisions together are actually the big kind of, how you create that feeling that you want within that space.
Mm, I think that's such a good point, and that's always been something that's really important to me as well as the environment, because I think if you're not relaxed and comfortable, you're not going to be able to absorb the information. So you can have the best class in the world, but if you're panicking and you're late and you're uncomfortable and there's lots of other stuff going on, then it's not gonna go in. And so the things that you talked about, the housekeeping, I suppose, in terms of like where's the car park or how do you get there from the station, and the refreshments, making sure people aren't hungry,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
all those things, and that empathy piece, I think, as well, of welcoming people in and sort of understanding that it is a bit nerve-wracking going somewhere new for the first time. Even as adults, we can find that hard. And I think as well, what comes up a lot for me and our students is like, am I going to be good enough, and am I going
yeah,
to manage this?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So there is those underlying anxieties and those little sort of things that help us to feel safe, whether it's the brownies or the coffee or the knowing when the lunch break is, or like knowing where the toilets are,
yeah,
and all those kind of things. Because we definitely get that feedback here in Brighton, is people are like, I just love being here, which is
yeah,
such a nice thing to hear, because that's
yeah,
exactly what we try and create. And there's so many courses that I've been on where the teacher is incredibly skilled and
yeah,
what I'm learning is exactly what I want to learn, but I'm so uncomfortable because
yeah,
they haven't done anything to make it comfortable.
yeah,
Because probably they were taught that way, just like sit down, be quiet, and
yeah,
learn this. And
yeah.
it's like, okay.
But indeed, what I see very often when it comes to marketing, workshops, is there's a very strong focus on the skill. Yeah. The higher up you go, indeed, then that is more important. But especially for beginners, it's actually around creating a safe space. Yeah. And like indeed, like I did, what I would highly recommend for people to do is go on a lot of workshops yourself and see and like, it's so interesting. I did this as part of my research. I did a lot of workshops and I was trained as a graphic designer, but I'm not a maker, at all. And actually, I went on this fantastic workshops in the woods in basketry near Brighton, and was like a 3-day event. I booked myself a tent. It rained all night. I was tired on day 2. And I was probably the most miserable student for this person. Yeah. But it was so useful for me as a teacher to realize, and like, if a student is hungry, tired, yeah, it was cold and miserable in the woods. Yeah, of course, outdoor teaching has its own challenges, but like really important. How is that experience? How is that feeling? And a lot of indeed what I see is a very strong focus on the skills. But actually, where it becomes really juicy, I think, is creating that space. And yeah, and everybody, especially I would say when it comes to beginners classes, people, yeah, if they've, yeah, and this is again like creating your own work. If people see an example of what they are going to make, and that's what you created, and it's a lot more complicated, and yeah, but you set the expectation very high. And if then people kind of go, oh, I'm not as good as that, or I'm not as good as my, yeah, people, let's be honest, we all have that little voice sometimes in our heads. Yeah. And especially if there's that pressure of, I'm having a good day, aren't I? It's really tricky. So you need to manage, yeah, that by creating a really safe and comfortable space, and picking up on that energy level within the space, and different people going at different paces. Really, really important. That is, yeah, a good teacher senses
Mm, absolutely. Love it. Okay, brilliant. We're storming through.
that.
So, number 4.
Connected with it. It's like, yeah, indeed, I see a lot of focus on the facts when it comes to promoting and marketing. And I would say include more emotionally, more feeling into your website, into, yeah, your workshop or things like that. That starts with, yeah, having a very clear title, having a very clear description. Indeed, like, especially I would say with workshops and 1-day beginner kind of workshops. A lot of people Google that. So your title is actually really, really important. Don't do too fancy titles. It's basically really looking at the keywords that people are looking for. I nearly always suggest that indeed you include the location of where you're based. Yeah. So indeed, yeah. Jess, you as an example, jewelry workshop in Brighton. Yeah. Jewelry workshop near the coast. Yeah, things like that. That needs to be in your title. It needs to be a lot of times on your website, because people really search a lot more than for products. They need to have a locality or something like that. But also they will be looking for fun 40th birthday present or alternative hen weekend or something like that, for example. So really have words like that, really anticipate what the keywords are that people are looking for, and make sure that that is in your marketing and in your titles. And again, looking at the motivation of why people might want to do your workshops or your courses, for example, around that. Really, really important. The other element is indeed like doing good old local marketing. Yeah. And with that, yeah, indeed, think about posters, think about banners, think about having something in the local library or in a lovely bookshop or something like that. So, yeah, it's not just all about Instagram and social media, although, yeah, hashtag things to do in Brighton, yeah, is very useful to get found. But really think local. And especially if you're doing longer courses, really, really important to remember that people will be within, let's say, a 20, 30-minute, yeah, travel time from you. You need to be quite well known or very specialist for people to drive an hour one way, an hour another way. Yeah. 6 weeks in a row. Yeah. You need to be very special. So that is slightly the problem if you're doing longer workshops. Really be aware local marketing is incredibly important, because that's where people come from. And sometimes it might actually be better to change the format rather than having a 6-week course on Wednesday evening or whatever, is make that a Friday and a Saturday workshop, for example, because then people from a longer way, and especially if you're living in a nice part of the UK, people might actually come to that, stay over, make it a longer kind of thing. But be very aware and need like add more feeling, add more emotion a lot of websites are very, very dry, I think, give very little information. And again, things like recently I saw somebody who runs workshops in Oxford and actually really talking about where they were located, that are, restaurants nearby where you then can buy for, your own food or things like that. It's a really safe area, especially if your audience is like single women. That things like that, just mentioning it's a safe area where you are, makes all the difference. So what sounds really obvious for some people, but not having it there can make really a difference why people are not buying from you or not booking your workshops. And it's very often in that actually soft power. Yeah. And I think that again, that feeling and emotion and maybe indeed, like, for example, recently I was working with somebody and she's very introvert and very quiet. And she had some people coming in and we were on the phone half the time. And I said, why don't you sort of say like, this is a phone free zone for the day? And she kind of went, I can't do that. I said, why not? I said, if you want to create, a quiet introvert space for the day and you market and promote it like that as a nice quiet day, with me time, and indeed include on your website information, sorry, but leave your phones at home. That's actually for some people a huge advantage. And you will then get the right people. So actually setting more boundaries around, what you want to do and being respectful for that, including that feeling again, really, really important, I think. And you set the rules because very often what I see when do people become tricky to manage or when are the problems is very often because people don't go for a niche or people are too open. And having both beginners and more advanced people together, I would say niche it down because more advanced students do not want to be with beginners. Let's be honest about it, it's boring. Yes, again, different people, be a lot more niche and go for that.
I love that. And I think it's, you're speaking about sharing exactly what it is that you're offering as well, that information. And it makes me think of attracting your ideal customer or your ideal
100%.
client. Because you don't want everyone, but you want the people that are aligned with what you're teaching and who are going to really enjoy it. And like you said, with the phone situation, if it's like, oh, when you come in, phones are off until lunchtime or whatever, then then everyone knows as well. Because I think there's also can be an embarrassment factor, can't there, of like, oh, I didn't expect this, or I didn't know, or because we're all when we're in person together, we're with each other. So I suppose you, as the central teacher and the person who's promoting it, will attract people, hopefully, who have similar values to you, and then hopefully they will sort of get on as a result. I mean, the great thing about teaching adults is they're choosing to do it, and teaching craft is people love it. So we already are so lucky that it's something that somebody wants to do, has chosen to do. But I think you're right about having those boundaries and how valuable they can be for everyone. And what a relief it can be. And I think I always like to know as much information as possible before I sign up for something. And a lot of, you spoke about this, a lot of classes are just like, this is the time it starts, this is the time it finishes, this is the location, this is how you book. And it's like, okay.
I don't know what I'm signing up for.
Yeah, it's a bit of a risk.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay. And that brings us on to tip number 5. These are so useful. Thank you.
Woohoo! So think beyond workshops. Yeah. And what I mean with that is like teaching is such a broad and such a creative, and can so connect in a way. I really would like teaching to be an extension, but also work together with your creative practice and whatever you do. And indeed, back from why and what and how all these things connect together from the big ideas about, my why is around sustainability or my why is about, keeping skills alive or whatever it is, or it's about feminine freedom or, identity all the way. And so think beyond workshops. So this is about both the format and the activities. So very often indeed people go, okay, one day beginners class, but I've recently done indeed a workshop around teaching at events, including corporate events, for example. So a lot of craft fairs now, there's demonstrations there. Yeah, a lot of museums now really want creators to work with, yeah, families on a Saturday or a Sunday, or it might be working with their collections. So really start to think a lot more, not just workshops, but maybe it might be a talk. Maybe it is about approaching your local museum or your local gallery and, yeah, do something. Maybe it's about doing something during the summer holidays for, yeah, children or teenagers. I think that's a huge area. I've been working with somebody who has been doing workshops in Newcastle, in a really quite a deprived area, and he's created he's purchased a hut in the middle of a park, and he is doing yes, sort of woodworking and knife skills. This area is notorious for problems with knife crime. And he says, I actually want to teach 12, 13, 14-year-old boys about respect for a knife and how you use it in a positive way. And the impact that this male teacher is having on, yeah, young boys through making and having, yes, something to do on a Saturday morning and being part of a community of young people. To me, that is so powerful. Yeah. And this guy keeps on telling me more and more little gems of what's coming out of this group and how they surprise him every time. Yeah. That to me is really interesting. What about doing maybe a walking tour? Yeah, in your area, if your work is about architecture or it's about symbolism, talking about that, or yeah, even if it is about the history of gems or certain styles. I recently saw a fantastic workshop around indeed presenting, yeah, or drawing sort of your designs for commissions, for example. And I thought that was such a brilliant, yeah, again, course that people are looking for. So again, thinking beyond that. Look at interviews, podcasts, yeah, as we are doing. And what is interesting with a lot of those things. So indeed, maybe as a good way to kickstart that is, yeah, rather than dreaming or hoping that people come to you, is who are, yeah, the 20 organizations or craft fairs or podcasts that you want to be featured in. Do a bit of research and then pitch to them and see what happens and co-create. Yeah. And that might be a panel discussion. It might be an interview. It could be all sorts of things online. Yeah. Again, how online and in person can work together, I think is really, really interesting. You can really upgrade a lot. So for example, you could run a workshop, and especially if it is a bit more for advanced people, why not offer then one-to-one Zoom sessions? Yeah, to give feedback, to get people the accountability, to keep people going beyond, yeah, that 6-week course that you're offering, for example. Maybe you write a book. Yeah, maybe you create a membership or community. And again, back to where we started. Yeah, why? Why do you want to teach? Is it about that community? Is it about making money? Is it about deeply impacting people? Is it about making money, or is it about making seasonal or more regular money, for example? Is it about your profile and your credibility as a teacher, as a creative? All these things connect together. But indeed, be creative in what you teach, how you teach, and why you teach. From all the little, yeah, jigsaw pieces together, that is what makes it unique, and that is what makes you stand out. And I know, yeah, in a healthy business, yeah, indeed, the Pareto principle, yeah, 80% of your turnover comes from 20% of your people. And then indeed, the bit what you were saying earlier, Jess, is like you get to work with your dream students, and they will inspire you, and they will allow you to do your best work and to get inspired because of that. And I think that is, by saying no, you can really say yes to your people, and that will allow you to do your best work with the best people. And how amazing is it to make a living like that?
It's all,
I don't know anything else.
yeah, we're both converted. So thank you so much, Patricia, for coming and sharing just a tiny bit of the incredible knowledge and skills that you've put into this book. I know it's been a real labor of love for you. And I think anyone out there that's even considering teaching at any point, definitely go and get yourself a copy. It's a great, it's got so much information in there. It's great reference. It's great for inspiration as well if you're already teaching. And just really kind of helpful for this specific area around creativity and teaching. And like you said just before we started, Patricia, you're on a mission to make teaching interesting again and not just the same old boring classes, but really tapping into who the person is, what their values are, and how we can create something really unique, even if it's around the same topic. So, thank you so much. And Patricia, where can people find out more about you and connect with you online if they would like to?
So have a look at the designtrust.co.uk. We are running loads of workshops and courses. We're doing live events to get indeed, teachers together as well. I'm a big believer in, sharing a lot more and supporting and highlighting indeed, fabulous examples of people who really do great work in this area.
Amazing. Thank you. Great. Well, thank you so much for listening. We'll see you back here next week with another episode. Take care, Patricia, and see you soon.